Delphi, Indiana, is a suitable place to live a laid-back life, where time seems to be moving even slower. A place where doors were left unlocked, and the children could run to and for unattended in the street. But it was in February 2017 when the living space of this community was disrupted by a crime that made the nation stand still. Two young girls decided to go out, take a walk in familiar territory, and were never seen again. What happened that day? And who could have done it? The answers would take years rather than decades and centuries to uncover. And to date, some of the questions are still shrouded in mystery. That was perhaps on a cold and bright February afternoon that a young Abby Williams and Liberty Germ, commonly known as Lee Baby, saw the Monon High Bridge Trail. The trail was a place the girls liked to visit. The trail offered an excellent view of the surroundings, and the Monon High Bridge was an iron railroad track. When crossing the bridge, laughing and taking photos, the girls did not assume that someone was observing them, a man who followed the girls into the woods. Before dying, Libby was able to take a picture of Abby on the bridge and posted it on Snapchat before the bridge collapsed. The picture became symbolic because the collapse was the last thing on the video alongside the bridge, appearing normal. Standing them, I expected the girls to return in the evening to be picked. Their absence raised eyebrows that something was wrong. Soon, night came in, fear and desperation took over, and the search for the boys started on full throttle. The only light came from flashlights that some volunteers brandished while combing the woods, reciting the girls' names in the process. However, their worst concern only came the following day, with the letter confirming their thoughts. Abby and Libby are two sisters whose lives were violently terminated and whose bodies were recovered from close to Deer Creek, but off the trail. The news shocked Delphi, and one would ask himself or herself the following question: who is behind this? That's where we leave the realm of the familiar and enter an enigmatic zone. Describing the incident as perhaps heroic, Libby, feeling that the pair was in over their head, had pointed her cell phone camera at the action. She recorded a blurry clip of a man approaching them on the bridge. His voice was recorded too, delivering a chilling command: down the hill. I had thought what an investigator would feel when listening to that voice and seeing the shadowy form of a man who could be the killer. It would be considered a trade breakthrough, but it was also puzzling. The audio and video released to the public continue to generate numerous theories to the public as well as tips. Who was this man? Why was he there that day? And how was it possible for him not to be punished for such a long time? The case grew into one of the largest and most studied investigations in the history of Indiana over the period of the next 5 years. Police investigated more than 70,000 suspects, and after examining the film, even frame by frame. However, after more than a decade of work put into the case, the killers remained unidentified. The families, however, never provided up. They became activists for justice and continued to speak for justice in the name of Abby and Libby. The people of Delphi were still mourning and searching for the killer, but sadness was a powerful force that changed to positive action. The families of Abby and Libby initiated the development of a memorial park for the girls, thus christening it Abby and Libby Memorial Park. Here's an inspiring twist. When the families embarked on fundraising for $50,000 that will fund the park, they did not expect the level of support. People from different parts of the country were also contributing, and up to that, they had reached a sum of more than $66,000. This resulted in a $50,000 match from Indiana's Creating Places program, which put the overall total over $116,000. The park is not just a memorial, it's a symbol of survival. In addition to playgrounds, walking paths, picnic shelters, and an open-air amphitheater for concerts and other major events, a living, breathing memorial to two friends and their laughter in Delphi. For many years, the case simply appeared to go nowhere. But in October 2022, the company broke the news that upset everyone in Delphi big time. Richard Allen, a 50-year-old man, pharmacy technician, and an inhabitant of the man-murder scene for 2.5 years, was arrested and charged with the murder of both girls. The twist? Alan was not an ideological outsider or a nomadic character. He was known to the people of Delphi, or rather he had been seen by them, a man who once walked among the townsfolk who sought their daughter's killer. He was employed at CVS, the pharmacy store, where people identified him with photo developments and chatter. The circumstances that supported the arrest of Alan were clear as they were shocking. Spent bullets, which were never fired, were retrieved near the scene, matched with a gun belonging to Alan. Moreover, during the investigation, Alan confessed to being on the trail the same day the girls were abducted, putting him very close to the scene of the crime. However, for such steps to be made, why did it take so long to draw the correlation? That question remained as the trial drew nearer. And for many, Alan's arrest created as many questions as it provided solutions. Richard Allen was tried in 2023 for the murders of Abby and Libby. Crown prosecutors painted him as a sexual obsessive who had remained undercover for the past several years. Let the bullet evidence speak. His statements of having been on the trail and other incidental suggestive circumstantial details pose a grim picture. The defense, however, was quick to jump at some loophole in the case as they put forward their defense. They criticized the so-called forensic evidence and noted that there was a lack of DNA or direct eyewitness accounts. They declined to present a case in mitigation, and many people had to think if there was what was being held for the appeal. Unfortunately, the jury brought the guilty verdict for Allen and sentenced him to 130 years in prison, which is 65 years per each killed life. When the verdicts were read, Allen continued to protest his innocence, and his lawyers said they would appeal. Thus, the conviction was somewhat satisfying to Delphi, but much about the case remains unclear. Did Richard Allen act alone? Are there any other people involved in the same case who are as innocent as the accused, but have not faced justice from a court of law? These uncertainties keep the storyline stimulating and compel amateur detectives and investigators to read the information in detail over and over again. However, between the chunks of grayness, there is some light. Currently, the memorial as a park is viewed as a physical space for community members to come to visit, stay, and take time in their otherwise busy lives to think about the tragic story of Abby and Libby. It is the symbol of the fact that there is no harassing darkness of evil deeds, but the illumination of such a united community can be achieved. But as you sit here and think of this story, do so with Abby and Libby. Abe's testimony is not one of sorrow, but of strength and solidarity. The Delphi murders not only gripped the community of Delphi, Indiana, but also drew attention from law enforcement experts, criminologists, journalists, and amateur sleuths across the country. Now discuss it from some perspectives. For investigators, the Delphi case was one of the most challenging of their careers. Doug Carter, superintendent of the Indiana State Police, described it as a case that haunted him and his team. Despite its complexities, Carter remained steadfast in his belief that the killer would be caught, famously addressing the perpetrator in a press conference. "We know this is about power to you, but we will not stop until we find you." Carter and his team faced intense public scrutiny and pressure, but they continued to work methodically, never giving up on the promise they made to Abby and Libby's families. Abby and Libby's families became the voices of the girls and relentless advocates for justice. Carrie Timmons, Libby's mother, and Anna Williams, Abby's mother, expressed both gratitude for the support they received and frustration with the slow pace of the investigation. In interviews, they often shared their hope that the killer would be brought to justice, while also working to keep their daughters' memories alive. "We don't want them remembered as just victims," Anna Williams said. "We want people to remember their laughter, their love for life, and the way they brought people together." For Delphi residents, the murders were a devastating blow to their sense of safety. What was once a quiet, trusting town became a place filled with suspicion and fear. Many community members were shocked when Richard Allen, a local man, was arrested. "He was one of us," one resident said. The idea that someone so close could do something so horrifying, it's still hard to wrap your head around. At the same time, the community rallied together, holding vigils, raising funds, and supporting the families. The Delphi murders may have shaken the town, but they also showed its resilience. Criminologists and behavioral experts weighed in on the case, noting the unique challenges it presented. Dr. Catherine Ramsland, a forensic psychologist, pointed out the importance of Libby's recording, calling it a rare and invaluable clue. She explained that such evidence could provide insight into the killer's mindset and movements, even if it didn't immediately lead to an arrest. Others, like retired FBI profiler Jim Clementi, suggested that the killer might have felt emboldened by the community's trust and familiarity. This was likely someone who knew the area well and felt confident they could evade detection, Clementi said. Each perspective adds another layer to the story, reminding us that behind every headline and statistic are real lives, real pain, and real hope for a better future. And ask yourself, where in this mission of justice is it possible for any one of us to sleep at night knowing that their memory and the memory of so many others will be efficiently erased?